De vuelta, gracias por estar en el panel anterior. Tuvimos una discusión.
Thank you for joining us. It was a really interesting discussion about a general divide. Today we're going to talk about something else as just important: social media, fake news, misinformation, social networks. I don't think there's anything that is such a hot topic right now. I mean, we're looking at the way that the social networks are being used in the electoral campaigns in the US. During the pandemic, we got lots of information about what to do, but sometimes it was also very confusing. The funniest thing I remember was that the whole business about the 5G antenna causing coronavirus. So we have a fantastic panel with us today. And the fun thing is that the geographical distribution is amazing. So this way, I'm in Buenos Aires. Catherine, who's a great friend, she's a Peruvian who lives in Holland. She's been living in the Netherlands. She's joining us from Europe. Jorge Navarro is in Mexico. Paloma is Buenos Aires. Cláudio is in Brazil. And Nicolás is in Germany. So I think from all of our panels, this is the one that really shows us that internet can connect us over such big distances, even despite different time zones. So Catherine, hi, how are you? I haven't seen you for ages. How are you doing? Sorry, I don't think you've got your microphone on. Oh, I'm so happy to be back. I think this is the third time I've been back to the South School of Internet Governance. It's a great honor. I'm privileged to be sharing with you, albeit on a virtual plane, to see such great colleagues as Cláudio, Paloma, Nicolás, and Jorge. We've shared so many different forums. And above all, as you say, its distance just becomes lines on a map, doesn't it? So this is using the best of internet to share know-how. And the issue that we're talking about today is so very topical, as it's very present in our lives and in our work. It also affects, the policies, the technologies that we're developing. So it's great to be here. All yours. We have time. We have an hour and a half for this panel. So I'll read the questions at the end. We have another Zoom chat room. So I'll be giving you some questions at the end when you tell me, when you give me the okay. I just wanted to share my screen with you. Here we go. Lovely. So we can't talk about this without putting it into context. Misinformation is totally contextual. It's not just a phenomenon, it's a problem on the social networks, but it's a problem in all areas. We have many sources which are worthy, which are good, which show us just the size of this phenomenon. 70 countries are carrying out political evidence, and it shows that there's at least one political party in each country which is manipulating social networks. This was said by the Internet Institute Forum in a report last year on global internet use. Now, recently, this year, and in other areas as well, at the end of last year, misinformation with COVID-19, obviously misinformation polarizes the public debate on all the issues related to COVID-19, which not only compromises people's physical health, when obviously because they read and they follow some of the wrong, the fake information, but we've also seen on lots of platforms and it increases the hate discourse, the risks of violence, the risk of violating human rights. This is what the UN is saying. In fact, this week, the UN said in its September report, which is about how COVID-19 talks about infomedia. It's an infodemic, in fact, not a In 2018, many social networks adopted in voluntary form as part of a process that I was invited to take part. I was actually at the table. Many social networks committed to auto-regulate the publication of information. This has had lots of different mechanisms and interventions in order to tackle misinformation, from confidence indicators to try and give political advertising more transparency, to check for fake news. There are thousands of examples that we could give to explain this dimension of the problem. Now, one of the principal axes is what we understand to be misinformation. Many experts and people work daily with the whole issue of fake news. They find that there are different ways of calling this phenomenon. We call it fake news, but there's a lot of sensitivity around the issue and how we should call it, because it's all kinds of different layers of information. And so far, we can see more clearly that the issue which most affects us is misinformation, because in this graph, as you can see, it's in the middle between information which is damaging and fake information. So we say fake news as a term, but we're not using it so much anymore. And what we're saying is instead is misinformation, which is a term that has been created thanks to public policy and regulation in the area, and including those that have been adopted on a voluntary basis, and also on the basis of the contributions by academia, which are painting a clearer picture in terms of how you typify these things. It's not just fake news anymore. So, because what is the difference between misinformation, disinformation, malicious information? We need to look at all these different aspects. And that's why I want to explain that this panel is going to be talking about misinformation on social networks and digital platforms. And I just wanted to clarify that because it's important. So we've shared out the topics with our colleagues in two rounds with a question each. And so they have about 8 minutes for each to tackle each question. The first round will be talking about, we've heard from lots of people about how to contextualize this. We've heard about different codes. We've heard interventions or solutions from a technical point of view, a technological point of view, social. One of the clearest ways of doing this is to improve digital literacy, the capability of citizens and civil society to understand digital life in order to understand how to interpret the kind of information, what's misinformation, and how important it is to check sources, and so on and so forth. So the first question we'll be discussing in the first round is, what are the main tools, methods, or causes which lead to misinformation on social networks? The objective here is to try and find the main causes of this problem. We recognize it's a phenomenon which is happening now. It's expanded very quickly, particularly during the time of the pandemic. But of course, we have to bear in mind that we have to tackle this from point of view of finding out where it's coming from. The second question we'll be dealing with is best practices. We have a panel with people who are working with this issue every day, and from each of their points of view, they're trying to find solutions to this problem, not only in the short term, but something that's going to work in the mid and long term, particularly collaborative solutions. So the second question is about solutions, best practices in order to tackle this situation on social networks. And the most important part of this question, without undermining the freedom of expression, because of course there are lots of different ways in which you can apply solutions. But what is the value? But what is being sacrificed here? And it cannot be the freedom of expression. We can't provide solutions which sacrifice people's right to express themselves. Because in general, civil society does have the right to express itself, and I think this is a very important right. So without further ado, we'll start with the first question on the first round. So each one of my colleagues will present themselves. No, there. And I have the honor to share this with Nicolás, who's going to kick off the round. Nicolás is a postdoctoral fellow. Paloma Sesman, who is a public policy manager at WhatsApp. Cláudio Lucena is a professor and former dean of the law faculty at Paraíba University. And Jorge Navarro Isla, who's a consultant to UNCTAD. So it's a pleasure to be here today, sharing with you. I am the digital policy manager at booking.com. Okay, over to you, Nicolás. So I'll get going then. I'm trying to share my screen here. Can you see this properly? I'm going to go for full screen. Can you see this? Okay. Can you see this? Yes, we can. Thank you. So my name is Nicolás. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Duisburg, Essen. I'm specialized in privacy issues and how the decision-making processes on social networks function. I also look at AI applications and ethics. The first question is related to the causes and dynamics underlying fake news on the social networks. And this is a very complex problem, different aspects, and it has to be disaggregated into different aspects. Internet allows us to broadcast information from an anonymous place. It's a very valuable instrument where freedom of expression is not guaranteed, as Catherine said. Social networks during the pandemic, but social networks have played a key role in the Arab Spring and in Russia, where we might say we have the last dictatorship is being tackled from the social networks, which are playing a key role in terms of all the protests which are being organized against the Russian government. So it's clearly a very valuable instrument in terms of freedom of expression and also this anonymity, but it also allows false information to be published without anybody being liable for the consequences of the damage that the information shared has. Very often we say that misinformation has been with us forever. Fake news is nothing new. But the big difference today is that information in the virtual world is shared so much faster, reaches massive audiences in seconds. And obviously, fake news goes around the world much faster than real news, than truth. So we're far more vulnerable when we consume information that actually has very low credibility ratings. It's quite difficult to separate fake news from deception or on social networks. We talk about the propagation of fake news on social networks, social bots or fake accounts are accounts which these are things that send unreliable information, and it could be from real people, but behind the account there are algorithms which are constantly calculating all kinds of parameters, and fake news is often the result of the work done by these social bots. It is impossible to analyze correctly the cognitive bias applied by users when converting information that they find on internet. Basically, the bias are the rules of thumb. And one basic example is the bandwagon social compliance. You can identify this clearly because it happens when you share something because your close friends are sharing this content. So you go with you jump on the bandwagon. Everybody else is doing it, so I'll do it. So when you get something on your Twitter feed or on your Facebook, content which your close contacts are sharing, you have a far greater tendency to share that too. This also has the consequence of the spiral of silence. This is a process which happens with political opinions, for instance, or when we hear controversial opinions. So you decide, you issue your opinion based on the climate of opinion in a specific point. So if most people don't think like me, then I'm just not going to say anything. So there are lots of fake news, and that also conditions what we will decide when it comes to the information that we want to share, which might go against the kind of climate that's been generated. I also think it's very important to talk about information diets, the echo chambers. The content which appears on Twitter and Facebook and social networks is selected by algorithms, use different mechanisms, and they recommend things to us. They recommend news to us, which we might find interesting according to our profile or other variables, such as our likes or content that we've published earlier. And very often, they recommend the same content over and over again, so the person doesn't have anything to contrast that with. So they always get the same kind of content. It's very often fake, and it could, and they don't have the courage to go against it, and maybe they don't get shown any other options. So I think these are the main issues here, and they explain a little bit the complexity of the problem that we're facing. Thank you, Nicolás. Thank you for this explanation of what some of the causes are. I remind you that at the end of each round, I'll wrap up the conclusions reached by the panelists. So we're now hear from Paloma. Paloma, over to you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today and exchanging opinions and points of view. I'm very happy to be here. As Catherine said, I'm Paloma Semen. I'm the Public Policy Manager at WhatsApp Latin America. And the idea that I want to talk about today, my first impressions at any rate, are which are the tools that WhatsApp has and what efforts are we making in the region to combat misinformation, particularly bearing in mind that WhatsApp isn't actually a social network. It's a messaging platform, private messaging platform, which is encrypted, end-to-end encrypted. And the issue of encryption, end-to-end, is the core of our application. And this has implications for the tools that we use and the efforts being made by the platform, as the efforts we're making to combat misinformation are different from those being made by other kinds of platforms and social networks. But first, I think we need to clarify the fact that we are a private messaging platform which is end-to-end encrypted. 90% of the conversations that take place on WhatsApp around the world are one-to-one conversations. They're conversations between two people. Most of the WhatsApp groups at global level are less than 10 people. So this means that most conversations and exchanges that take place on the platform are between close contacts. Apart from that, the fact that it's a platform which is end-to-end encrypted means that only people in the conversation and nobody else, not even WhatsApp, has access to the content of what's going on in that conversation. Whatever is exchanged stays between the people who are on the end-to-end, so to speak, which is the group. Added to that, WhatsApp is designed to minimize data sharing within the service, which is one of its safety features. It's very easy to use, but because it's encrypted end-to-end, it minimizes data capture and thus is reliable and safe. So the fact that a platform being encrypted end-to-end, and because it's a private messaging platform, all of this means that the tools needed to tackle misinformation are very different because WhatsApp doesn't see the content or what is created during the conversations. This means that WhatsApp cannot moderate content, unlike other platforms. We don't moderate means that you can't remove the content, it can't tag it, it can't flag it. It can't get involved in any way in the distribution of the content per se. So you might ask then, what on earth is WhatsApp doing to combat misinformation? Well, we have many tools in the project, and we're also making lots of efforts in a proactive way to tackle misinformation. The first of these is the resend tag. Now, if you're a WhatsApp user, obviously you would have seen that when you get a message that wasn't written by the person who sent it to us, it has a tag that says resend with a little arrow next to it, okay? And when that message was sent more than 5 times, it has a double arrow telling us that this content has been viralized. It says resend and it has a double arrow. After 2018, we've been working on trying to limit the resending of messages at one go. In 2018, we limited the resending of messages to more than 20 chats. That means a 25% reduction in the global number of resent messages. Last year, this resending limit was brought down to 5 chats a time, which meant that the number of resent messages was dropped by 70%. Now, at the start of 2020, resent messages with the double arrow, because they've been sent 5 times, you can only send it to one other person at a time. So all of these efforts have helped to reduce the number of resent messages at global level. In addition to that, WhatsApp established privacy controls and privacy configurations for groups, which give users control of deciding who they want to add to a group. As an admin, you can add any user from WhatsApp, whether they're a contact or not, to a group, but you can only do that, or we can choose whether we want to be added to any group, some groups, friends groups, or not at all. So nobody can add you by sending you a private invitation, and because they need to have the option whether they want to join the group or not. You have different ways of accepting an invitation to join a group, but it's up to you. Now, in addition to these options, WhatsApp proactively combats certain behaviors on its platform, and it does so in 3 ways. Firstly, there are preventions. When an account is registered on WhatsApp, it detects the behaviors which might be abnormal in sending messages, and then what would be user complaints and reports. Now, what I said earlier about prevention at registration time means that whenever we register with WhatsApp, we create an account and we're asked for a verification code, which allows users to check that they are actually the owners of the numbers for which the WhatsApp account is being created.
And 20% are logged in the registration process before you send a single message or the first message. Also, they detect anomalies in sending patterns. For example, considering when they send or they create groups faster than any human being, these behavior patterns, even though they don't see the content of the messages because it's an end-to-end encryption application, allow us to identify an anomaly in the behavior and act accordingly. When we're typing a message in WhatsApp, on top it says writing and suspensive dots. Well, in that case, where there's an automation automating outgoing message being sent and there's no suspensive dots, there's an indication that probably behind that there's an anomaly. The same thing when they change pretty fast in the contact agenda or the contact list, or there's a lack of reciprocity when sending and when receiving a message. And then we respond to the negative feedback that WhatsApp receives claims by users, especially when they receive spam or receive an unwanted, unsolicited message. One is to add the person, but the other one, or the other two, is to report as spam or directly to block the sender. So WhatsApp is responding whenever they see negative feedback from users. Apart from that, WhatsApp take actions to abusive behaviors. For example, WhatsApp is a private messaging platform thought to having interactions among close contacts. It's not thought for spamming or for newsletter sending. So apart from the platforms and anomaly or anomalous behavior or a way of preventing anomalies in the event, we have this strange registration. WhatsApp responds when there are companies that announce to provide instant messaging or texting, or when they use these brands unduly. First, I would like to give you a snapshot of these measures and actions that WhatsApp take. And at the same time, I believe that the takeaway for the audience, especially for all the panels that we share the view, as is an end-to-end encryption, we do not moderate content. However, it doesn't mean that we are not making proactive efforts in order to act upon prevention and to prevent misinformation. And during the second part of my presentation, I'm going to tell you about these efforts made and what can we do from the point of view of users to prevent misinformation. Great. Thank you, Paloma. Right now, I will have the privilege to hear from the opinion on the causes of misinformation from Cláudio. Cláudio, over to you. Thank you very much, Catarina. Greetings for you, Olga. We had a great panel a few days ago on ways of participating in the internet ecosystem. So greetings to all of you. I was involved in this forum that is very controversial for the national plan of misinformation in Brazil. My greetings to students. As a matter of fact, I was a student at first in the School of Internet Governance dating back to 2015 in Costa Rica. And greetings to Nico that presented the social dilemma. I recommend Nico's work because you have a detail or the core of what happens in social dilemma. I'm sorry, but the connection is breaking up. We cannot interpret with this. I'm sorry, but we cannot interpret this presentation. No.
Histórico tiene que tener 2 o 3 minutos y les prometo que es un histórico para 2 o 3 minutos, pero para señalar la importancia de cómo estas dinámicas se han desarrollado en los últimos años. 2016 tuvimos las primeras, digamos, los primeros fenómenos de escala global que están conectados con desinformación. A 23 de junio, y yo lo sé porque la fiesta de San Juan es el 23 de junio, la más importante en mi ciudad, en Brasil, y yo estaba en Portugal, lejos, no estaba en mi casa, y despertamos ahí el 24 con una decisión inusitada de plebiscito de Brexit. Y después comienzo de noviembre, si no me equivoco, la elección también de Donald Trump. Los dos fenómenos globales. No que este fenómeno de desinformación ya no existía en medios analógicos o que no tenía impacto digital, pero contenido. Ahí estamos hablando de los dos grandes impactos políticos para empezar este tema. Y me acuerdo que en 2016 estábamos al final del año en Ginebra, en Guadalajara, para el IGF, y no me acuerdo de sesiones dedicadas al tema de desinformación. Estaban ahí la discusión pendiente, pero sesiones dedicadas en IGF ahí no tuvimos. 2017 nos encontramos nosotros en Río para la CIM, para la Escuela Sur, Governanza de Internet, abril o mayo. Ahí ya tuvimos un par de sesiones. Lo que quiero decir es que la dinámica, no como la programación.
Sí, claro.
Entre junio no hubo tiempo para que hubiera reflejos de los hechos, de los fenómenos en las discusiones del jefe, que ya estaban decididas las sesiones. 2017 tuvimos la Escuela Sur de Gobernanza de Internet, el tema ya estaba ahí. 2017, fines del año, ya estábamos ahí sí en Ginebra, y si no me equivoco tuvimos 80 sesiones con la temática de desinformación. ¿Qué pasó con este fenómeno que salió de una importancia, digamos, lateral, complementaria a el principal tema o uno de los principales temas en el ecosistema de gobernanza de Internet? Bueno, imagino que Nico ya les ha dado un par de caminos, ¿no? La escala es uno de ellos. Y la necesidad de una mirada con más cuidado ha sido también un reflejo del impacto en condiciones que están en nuestro día a día. Estos fenómenos son fenómenos políticos, son fenómenos que impactan la democracia. Y ahí me parece que ha encendido una red flag, y ahí todos se volvieron a estudiar este tema con un poco más de atención. Y desde ahí no creo que tenga participado de un gran evento desde el 2017, que no tengamos hablado nosotros juntos, aquí un par de veces juntos hablando de desinformación, ¿no? Entonces, que este histórico, esta dinámica de cómo el tema sale de una importancia lateral, secundaria, a ocupar el espacio principal de discusión, está en el Digital Roadmap del Secretario General de las Naciones Unidas, ¿no? Está en el centro del debate. Entonces, está impactando en temas que son de nuestro día a día, en valores, en intereses que no son muy caros, como democracia, como libertad, ¿no? Y esto está, como el problema se está convirtiendo en una cosa más compleja, con mucho impacto. Hay una tentación enorme de encontrar una solución simple. Y el periodista Henry Louis Gates, un americano muy sagaz, ha dicho que para todos los problemas complejos tienen una solución simple, evidente y miserablemente equivocada. Porque si el problema es complejo, es evidente que no tenemos una solución simple. Y esta idea de tener soluciones simples nos están mostrando soluciones que no son las más adecuadas. Y ahí les hablo con la experiencia de haber trabajado al final, pero de involucrar en el proceso de discusión de la ley de desinformación, de combate a desinformación en Brasil, que es premente, es urgente. Tuvimos encuestas, Nico, de un 97% de apoyo popular para una ley que tratara de combater de alguna forma la ley de fake news, o combater desinformación. Pero la pregunta no estaba en puesta, ¿no? Si usted es favorable a que una ley combata, claro, soy favorable, evidente. ¿Usted es favorable a una ley que nos traiga felicidad, alegría? Claro. El problema es saber cómo metemos estos mecanismos en un texto legal, que es una solución de una componente, acuérdense del problema complejo, una componente de solución jurídica, y decimos, esta ley nos va a solucionar el problema. Es una tentación de Brasil, porque estoy involucrado, pero sabemos que Alemania tiene, si no me equivoco, 2018, ¿no? La NetzDG, que ha tenido su experiencia ahora en este año, un par de pasos a más, Y ahí en Brasil ya estamos con un macro sistema que nos promete el Olimpo de un espacio digital sin toxicidad, sin odio, sin esto todo. Entonces, este me parece que es una tentación peligrosa, porque si el problema es complejo, no estamos hablando de una acción, ¿no? Desinformación no es una acción, un acto isolado. Y con esto les quiero decir que si no es una acción, es un proceso. La solución tampoco es una acción. La solución también tiene que ser un proceso. Entonces estamos hablando de una solución un poco más compleja. Claro que esta sensación de urgencia de las poblaciones, de que están en un espacio que ya no es un espacio seguro, nos da este senso de urgencia. Casas legislativas en todo el mundo van a ser presionadas para agir en este sentido, y hay caminos jurídicos también a hacer, pero es un elemento, es un abordaje. El abordaje, para mí, la única sostenible de vida larga es educación. Pero tenemos el problema ahora. Las elecciones en Brasil son en 2 meses. No vamos a poder educar toda la población brasileña en 2 meses. Este grado de madurez no nos va a venir. No sé cómo, y ahí esta es una pregunta de billones de dólares, ¿no? ¿Cómo manejamos para una intervención que nos permita convivir un poco con este espacio sin tantos daños, reservando las libertades fundamentales al tiempo en que vamos gradualmente acostumbrándonos a las antiguas generaciones y las próximas a convivir en estos periodos? Porque si hay una cosa que desde marzo hasta acá, Caterina, con esto termino, nos ha mostrado el mundo es que se vamos a tener alguna alteración en la convivencia digital, pero de ahora hasta adelante es para más convivencia digital, nunca para menos, ¿no? Entonces, que sea un espacio limpio y lleno de las cosas positivas que nos ha traído este tema. Gracias.
Gracias, Cláudio, y gracias por recordarnos de que este problema es reciente.
Thank you very much. I know this dates back to 2017. I know that, that the journey that we made since that time is a contextual issue, but it's not new. The traditional press has had these issues. As you well said, the issue that is supported by social media and online platforms, as Nicolás explained that well. Probably this has a lot of scalability right now at the global level, and we're not prepared to face this challenge. Jorge is going to tell us his perspectives of what the causes are. And we're going to try to delve into these details. What are the reasons, the root causes of this phenomenon? And before we draw conclusions, probably if you want to make comments, feel free to make them. Jorge, pleasure to be here. Catherine, it's a pleasure to share this panel live from Mexico. It's a pleasure seeing you in this discussion forums. An honor and a privilege to be a panelist here. I would like to thank you. I would like to thank Cláudio de Paloma's presentation. It's a great chance to be here. When you're the last panelist, usually all the information has all been said. And that's why I would like to refer to the fundamental issues that are important to bring to the table here. The problem of this misinformation in social media is something that we need to focus on, especially on education, in order to tackle these challenges, to address these challenges. We're living in hostile times. In universities in Latin America, for example, somebody says that they were free. And it's very complicated with social media, and it's exacerbated. I'm going to focus this from the address this from the legal point of view. Mm-hmm.
Y estos espacios de posverdad han irrumpido de manera drástica en los debates públicos hacia dos temas concretos. El tema, desde luego, y me voy a las raíces del problema respecto de la manipulación, al final del día, que se va logrando para la adhesión a sistemas ideológicos, a formas de pensar, a la adhesión que se busca para lograr, entre otras cuestiones, también pues, votos. Y esto implica también, entre otras cuestiones, pues una racionalidad pues, un poco perversa que estamos enfrentando en este entorno. Estamos desafortunadamente inmersos en una dictadura del clic. Esta dictadura del clic se ha generado, entre otros puntos, por esta sociedad de consumo informático de hiperinmediatez en la que estamos viviendo. Y esto tiene una razón de ser también interesante. Al final del día, veamos cómo la forma que se va generando la adicción, muchas veces a las redes sociales, va de la mano con las reacciones emotivas que se tienen respecto a las interacciones que se van teniendo con los distintos mensajes. Vean ustedes, por ejemplo, esta dependencia que se va generando a estar pegado en los teléfonos, en los dispositivos, viendo de manera automática cómo se van generando esos flashes, cómo se van generando estas noticias o estas notificaciones que generan, desde luego, pues, un impacto emocional en las personas que estamos enfrente de las pantallas. Entonces, estamos teniendo modelos verdaderamente sui generis que han tenido un desarrollo exponencial y a partir precisamente de, como bien señala Cláudio, de 2017, 2018, prácticamente ha cobrado una relevancia inusitada. Esta expansión prácticamente universal que están teniendo la posibilidad de convertirse en virales de estos mensajes. Entonces, me parece que aunado también como una de las causas, de las raíces de este problema de la desinformación, pues estamos haciendo concesiones tremendamente onerosas, porque nos estamos acostumbrados a la cultura del todo gratis, de la gratuidad de los mensajes, de la gratuidad de los contenidos. No nos gusta pagar por informarnos. Y desafortunadamente esto implica que van privilegiándose criterios económicos para la diseminación de información que no pasa por un proceso de análisis, que no pasa por un proceso de revisión, y prácticamente se genera esta capacidad de responder de manera inmediata, de bote pronto, como diríamos en México. Entonces, nos estamos enfrentando a problemas de estructuras de mercado, a problemas ideológicos, a problemas donde también estamos enfrentando una gran manipulación, una gran desinformación, y donde hay una tremenda proclividad por parte de los líderes políticos a erigirse en líderes de opinión, a erigirse como los principales guías informativos, los principales creadores de conciencia respecto de qué es lo que deben o no creer las personas qué es lo que deben asumir como verdadero las personas, los gobernados, respecto de estos filtros de información, y se va acotando, se va restringiendo de manera muy peligrosa esta suerte de dictadura que que en muchas ocasiones se puede imponer a partir de las cúpulas de poder, donde se van desacreditando todas las voces de periodistas, de periodismo serio, se van desacreditando como una tendencia, como un mecanismo de poder. Y bueno, pues con esto es la respuesta desde mi muy particular punto de vista de la génesis de este fenómeno de desinformación. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Jorge. Great panel. Thanks to the quality of information that we're providing. We have different point of views, empirical data that Nicolás referred to. Over the last 2 years, as Cláudio said. And we held many conversations with Nicolás, indicating the root causes and the way he presents very concrete cases, like the anonymity and the participation on the internet, the speed and how news fly. And also some deception methodologies. I would like to hear the research conducted on deception methodologies and that information. How are you using this in committees? We believe that this is a tool that we all share, that is being talked about, and we have reactions like the spiral of silence that allows for secret chambers or political conspiracies. And then Paloma gave us an idea or gave us an overview of the tools that WhatsApp has been implemented in order to use to face the challenge of, or to tackle the challenge of misinformation. And referring to Paloma's presentation, WhatsApp said says how they are going to, how they are fighting these anomalies from the social, sociological, and psychological point of view. Because in technology platforms, we are acknowledging that this is a social problem, giving a new dimension to this dilemma. Also, everything that has to do from the psychological and behavioral point of view that could be regulated by law. And this is what happened in the short term, and is what Cláudio addressed in Brazil, and the way I explain it that is happening in the European Union, that is self-regulatory for the self-union and other jurisdictions within the European Union, not of it. So I'm going to pose a question for everybody, and that is related to the first round addressed during the panel. We cannot provide a one-size-fits-all solution. We need to consider the context, political, and specific jurisdictions, or can we approach it globally? And my second question has to do with reflecting on what Paloma said, that WhatsApp does not moderate content. Most of the solutions so far are on content regulation. So What other solutions can we provide? And this is related to the second round of these questions that related to the recommendation and best practices in connection with misinformation in the social platforms without sacrificing freedom of speech, democracy, and things like that, as we mentioned in the first round of questions. Nicolás, your turn.
Thank you. Hi, Jorge, Cláudio, Paloma, Catherine. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and tell you a little bit about what we've been doing from the academic point of view. And as you said in your summary, this is a very complex subject. I remember this from when I gave speeches at IGF, because my area has to do with how we use processing mechanisms to support decision making with regard to privacy. In that context, when we try to apply AI to help people take better decisions about their personal data and what they reveal on social networks, you could say that this is a noble thing to do. But however, you can apply this in all different aspects of the design of social networks. And therefore, this involves exploiting cognitive bias. So what I wanted to say is, to talk to you about, is about the processes being undertaken from the social or psychological point of view, which with regard to how fake news is consumed and disseminated on internet, and those beginning the process who design the social bots and use these accounts know perfectly well what biases can be exploited. Trying to recreate fake news in as realistic way as possible, because what you're doing is exploiting a bias related to credibility. If the account has certain components, it might be real, but you can check to see if there is no personal information, because it probably means it's fake. So it is quite easy to use available technology, and fake news is a form of deceiving people. And those people who disseminate it are using this kind of mechanism to harm people. Or they're using it to further their own personal interests, governments, elections, and so forth. It's important to analyze the relationship at a cognitive level between technology and design, and how these affect decision making. Because any element that we introduce into the network and the applications that we design, I'm talking from my place as a designer of an interface, I'm working in HSI, all those sorts of decisions lead us to making people take decisions with regard to privacy and the kind of content they share. So we need to revisit how we can introduce mechanisms and designs which are more efficient when it comes to stemming the dissemination of misinformation. This is very important. Thank you. Paloma, could you tell us a little bit about what solutions you envisage in terms of design from the point of view of your current work? We'd like to hear about what WhatsApp has been doing, what works and what doesn't work. And we'd like a critical view as well, looking forwards. What is working? In my case, as I am constantly observing issues related to content and see what works in terms of regulating these. A great deal is being said about governance. The only solution is not by any means. There is not only one solution. I think there is great wealth to be found in integrated solutions, complementary ones, which can dovetail with others, including different aspects like psychological, legal, technical. But we have to develop these tools. I work in this area, and I know just how long it takes to understand the best way of dealing with the mechanisms of misinformation. So what are the tools and best practices being applied by WhatsApp at the moment? In addition to the proactive measures which I told you about earlier, I wanted to tell you about two ideas we're pursuing. The work that is being carried out with fact checkers and also some tips and why we think that from WhatsApp, combating misinformation is everybody's responsibility. So what I was saying originally about the fact checkers. WhatsApp is, as I said earlier, a private messaging platform which is encrypted end to end. So we don't check content, we don't intervene, so there is no fact checking because the fact checking has to be carried out by the users themselves. Now, in this sense, we are working with fact checkers, and this year's, in the context of coronavirus, we put $1 million towards the international fact-checking network because in Latin America, we have 6 Spanish-speaking fact-checking fact checkers and 3 in Brazil, which allows us to share information and find out whether we have credible users or ones that are suspicious in the context of coronavirus, which takes us back to the earlier question. Obviously, the coronavirus and all the questions and doubts that we had about the pandemic and this weird situation we're living in, this all requires extra effort to be made in order to combat misinformation. So on the basis of the work carried out, the fact checkers that we're working with in the region as well as in other parts of the world, WhatsApp and the International Fact-Checking Network, which has its own chatbot. We check the telephone numbers. Our chatbots work on our website, and we use them to check news or messages that we get and send them to the fact checker, and then we get the feedback from the fact checker to help us understand whether the message we received is dubious or not, fake. But I think the most important thing is that WhatsApp can't do its own fact checking because it's this encrypted end-to-end platform. It has to be the users that do this. And this takes me to the second point, which I mentioned, which was commented earlier. How to combat misinformation is through a shared responsibility. And this goes back to what Nicolás was saying earlier. We all receive messages. with the little arrow or the double arrow, which means that they were resent. And the most important thing is to take a critical and sharp attitude to these in order to identify any news or messages that might be of doubtful origin, they might be dubious, maybe you have to check it out. So we've made available these fact-checking bots to check things on our website, and we've shared many kinds of tips on different occasions. We've shared recommendations to help users identify fake information and combat it. But the way people use WhatsApp means that conversations on our platform are private. So if we want to contact somebody, we have to have the permission of that person to make that contact. We have to define people's expectations when we have these conversations and allow people to make informed decisions when they have a conversation in terms of the messages they want to receive or not. So it's important to send only the kind of messages that somebody else wants to receive. And it's kind of a question of respect, really. So from WhatsApp, we call upon people not to hire these automation services that violate the terms of the platform. Our on and off platform decisions, we're working very hard to stop spamming because it goes against the terms of service. And we also think that it's important to ensure that people respect their decisions whether to receive messages. And the other side of that is obviously that we're asking people not to send unwanted messages all over the place. So it's a double-faced thing. What tips do we offer people to help users identify fake news? Firstly, check whether it's been checked, whether it's sent or double sent, because you have to check those tags, because we know that rumors travel far faster. So that's the first sign that there might be dubious content, the fact that it went viral. We also have to be really careful with multimedia messages like audios or images or videos, particularly if we don't know where they came from, particularly if they've been resent lots of times. And also just keep an eye out for any messages which look different, which are designed to attract our attention, maybe a few mistakes, spelling mistakes, or maybe it's something that's been touched up. So it's like clickbait, you want to find out more. And we're asking people to be critical about this. As Nicolás was saying, it's not the fact that we've received information which confirms what I believe doesn't mean to say that I have to automatically share it. You need to take a step back and think about it. Does it really make sense to resend content that we're getting just because? And finally, we need to always check things. We need to fact check, don't you? Coronavirus, we have our own fact-checking bot, which is linked to lots of health ministries all over the world, where you can get reliable, authentic information. And then, as I said, we work with fact checkers. People have to try and get to the source of the information that they receive before you share it. And just resend indiscriminately isn't perhaps the best thing to do. Thank you, Paloma, for your words. I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to ask Cláudio to tell us a few things here. I'm sorry, I cannot interpret what Cláudio is saying. The sound quality is so bad.
Pero sí hay unas cosas que están más claras, ¿no? Hay un proceso de transformación digital. Si nosotros miramos a las pequeñas y medianas emprendimientos en Latinoamérica, por ejemplo, hay un impulso, hay un impulso que tomaría años, seguramente, y estamos ahí un poco adelantados por el tema desde que esta situación que vivimos desde marzo. Para nuestro tema de discusión, yo creo que este periodo ha dado una contribución que es muy clara, y en términos, es otra cosa que a los profesores les gustan, son las analogías, las comparaciones. Y acá en este tiempo tenemos una que es muy importante. Con el tema del COVID, nosotros hemos aprendido, se ha discutido bastante en todos los periódicos, en la comunicación social, que es necesario tomar su distanciamiento social, mantener su cuarentena, estar aislado y mantener una distancia de 2 metros, por lo menos. No sé si hay una pequeña variación en términos de esta distancia, pero una distancia segura de 2 metros. Y aquí está un buen ejemplo de cómo debemos cooperar en estos tiempos. Porque nos decía Paloma que están trabajando con algo alrededor, si no escuché equivocadamente, alrededor de 10 a 15 fact-checkers, ¿no?, en Latinoamérica. Hay un límite operacional para escalar esto. Ustedes pueden hacerlo el doble, 30, probablemente sí, con un costo operacional más alto. El triple, probablemente sí, ahí ya en el límite, 10 veces no. Porque esto va a escalar hasta un punto en que se necesite la estructura que tiene. Entonces, hay un límite en esta colaboración. De nuevo, de regreso al COVID, la recomendación que mantengamos 2 metros de uno a otro no la va a exigir el gobierno. El gobierno no va a contar 2 metros de un ciudadano a otro. Eso no es posible. Y esto se alinea con la idea de Paloma que sí hay una responsabilidad compartida. Hay que hacer medir metros, mantener 2 metros de distancia, porque un fiscal del gobierno no va a ir para cada ciudadano y medir si hay 2 metros de una persona a otra. Este mismo raciocinio tenemos que tomar en cuenta en términos de compartir. Lo que pasa es que ahí ya en el tema de Nico hay disparos psicológicos en estos temas. Hay gente, Catherine, que seguramente el ambiente digital del grupo de WhatsApp en que participa, él es el ambiente en que ella se siente más importante. Es ahí que por monitorear las cosas que están pasando, se siente importante de dar una noticia nueva a alguien que solo batería a la noche en los periódicos. ¿Y cómo se dispara? Porque hay que trabajar esto. De la misma forma que el gobierno no va a medir 2 metros entre cada uno de nosotros en términos de salud, no es posible monitorear ciudadanos de uno a uno para saber lo que van a hacer en este tema. Sí, soluciones, de nuevo, educación, vida larga, criticidad, pero en realidad, si hay un censo crítico mínimo, nosotros reducimos este problema para un nivel manejable, ¿no? El problema es que este censo crítico está involucrado con disparos psicológicos que no están fuera de nuestro alcance. Si la población que comparte estas noticias, que desinforman, hicieron un mínimo de juicio crítico y empezaron a hacer, yo he visto en un sitio más, aquí está lo que dice la noticia, lo mismo que el contenido, ya no comparte, pero ahí pierde su impacto personal de influencia en su grupo. Entonces, aquí hay que tratar de un tema que es, de nuevo, más complejo que imaginamos, para el cual, te repito, regulación es una componente importante, pero no sola. Y mencionabas el estándar, si tenemos un estándar único, y esta es una cuestión que me interesa bastante, ¿no? Porque ese estándar único, global, aplicable globalmente, nos estamos buscando hasta ahora en el ambiente internacional de derechos humanos, ¿no? Porque tenemos guidelines, conceptos, principios, pero en la implementación no se ha podido hasta el momento de hoy llegar a una, digamos, una línea de aplicación objetiva, concreta, más práctica. El estándar, por ejemplo, de NetzDG para sacar informaciones falsas no es el mismo de la ley brasileña. El estándar de freedom of expression, de libertad de expresión de la Suprema Corte de los Estados Unidos no está como los estándares de ningún país de Latinoamérica. Y esto y si vamos a implementar herramientas de control con base en estos estándares, que son construcciones culturales, después jurídicas, ¿cómo se va a construir herramientas únicas o globales, de alcance global, si estos estándares culturales, después jurídicos, sociales, no son lo mismo? Entonces son preocupaciones que sabemos que tenemos. De nuevo, yo creo en todas las soluciones, yo soy un creyente en todas las soluciones, pero combinadas, en cooperación, en colaboración, sabiendo que estamos aquí en intentar y equivocarnos y regresar a pensar de nuevo, porque no hay como solucionar desde golpe.
Exacto, y yo creo que estamos en un proceso de aprendizaje, ¿no? Hemos reconocido que hemos empezado recientemente en darles respuestas de mediano.
It's true that we've been starting to look at long-term effective policies. And this requires processes to optimize knowledge, to optimize our approach to finding the best solution. I enjoyed listening to Paloma's solutions, which are focused on this shared responsibility. Definitively, I think that this is the common denominator for all our panelists today, that it is a shared responsibility when it comes to combating misinformation. It's academics, civil society, NGOs, the industry. We have to find a comprehensive solution in that sense. And also, the recommendation is now for citizens to check things such as things that are designed to grab their attention, with multimedia images, the clickbait, these attention-grabbing titles. It becomes quite complex, actually. So I would like to hear from Nicolás. I didn't give him the opportunity to say something. He has to talk about solutions, Nicolás. Sorry, I had the sound was off. So, yes, this goes hand in hand with what Paloma was saying. The two little lines of resend in WhatsApp, this is exactly what I think that we need, right? Those are our key cognitive indices, which help to show us whether the content is being viralized or not. And what we're working on today, there are more people who are more involved with fake news. My area is privacy, but the idea is, how do you reduce those cues, those and encourage users to carry out self-assessment. So to help them define, based on real information, or just watching how they themselves react to the news, and help them to define whether it's fake news or not. So here, hashtag take care before you share. That's a UN campaign, which I think is really interesting. And it's basically about thinking about the consequences before you share something. And what we see here is intervention, or thinking about things before you upload it onto your wall, before you post it on your networks. We asked people, it's asking people, like, do you really think this is real news? They might seem like really simple questions, but the idea of asking yourself this question before you post actually makes a huge difference. Maybe this should be adopted as kind of public policy within some of the networks or the platforms. On the right is is information that's used for fake news. This is the outcome of a discussion which took place in Backstooge. It's a German place where scientifics get together in Europe and talk about different problems. And what they propose, adding different kinds of information related to the text, how many spelling mistakes there are, is it legible, is it understandable, and to carry out a score, like on a scorecard. And that will help you to define whether the content is fake or not, or whether it's being viralized, or at least provide some kind of indication as to how much we can really trust it. So that's what I wanted to say to you. I'll be sharing my presentation later so people can download it and so people can check it, check the information.
Perdón.
Sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me? We should be looking at winding up. So, Jorge, Olga, Jorge, do you want to say anything? We have about 7 minutes left, and I have 5 questions for the panelists. So, if you do want to say something. Let's just move on to the questions, shall we? Something that happened to us with this virtual school, you know that we always have remote participation, but this year, because it's virtual, we've got people from all around the world. We have one in Bangladesh who's been with us all the time, and he asks lots of questions. So, Ramon, I'm going to read your question. I'm going to read it in English, because I think it's going to be clearer, and then I'll say it in Spanish.
Chats can be tracked remotely using TISPy. T-I-S-P-I. The app requires online installation on the device you wish to monitor. So, how can he be ensure about his privacy? Él pregunta que hay chats de WhatsApp que pueden ser traqueados.
The question is, how can you track WhatsApp use using Tipsy? It's an app. The application requires online installation. You just download it to your device, onto the device you want to monitor, and he's asking how you can protect your privacy in this context. There are other questions for WhatsApp. If encryption also works for WhatsApp groups. And the other questions are more general. Can social bots be detected? Because some platforms don't seem to detect them. Getting rid of anonymity and validating biometric data, would that be part of the solution that Cláudio was talking about? And what is your opinion about fact checkers like factcheck.org or chequeado.com? As for the questions addressed to WhatsApp, I know the application that you're talking about, but I have to say again that WhatsApp is encrypted end-to-end. It's extremely advanced, and this does include the groups, which I think was one of the questions. And encryption between people works between the people taking part in that group. Encryption is what ensures this end-to-end secrecy, not obviously between the user and the app, but it ensures that the conversations and whatever happens between users stays with them. The idea is that nobody else can access the content of that conversation. I don't know if there were any other questions. Does encryption also work with groups? Yes. Yes, it does. And I think the last is more general. What do you think about chequeado.com and fact check? And I think there was another one. As I said earlier, WhatsApp is working with fact checkers, and we think that this can be a valuable tool for users to actively check information, as they can have somewhere where they could go and check and answer any questions they might have regarding doubtful or dubious information they receive, particularly when they spot some of these signs that we were talking about earlier, which really encourages you to think twice about it. As I said, we will work with lots of different kind of fact-checking organizations, and we want to make this available to users. There's an interesting question here about the fast solution, suppressing anonymity and verifying biometric data. Could this be part of a simple solution? Well, Cláudio said it could be a simple solution, but it might also be a bad solution depending on how you look at it. I can't translate Cláudio because of the ambient noise. Neither can I translate Jorge's intervention because there's just sound is just too bad quality.
Al final de cuentas, que sacrificar este tema del anonimato y esa libertad de expresión, pues la tendrías que prácticamente prescindir de ella. Y con relación al tema de sitios como verificado.com.mx, el caso de México, considero que es una iniciativa que tendría o debería de replicarse a nivel regional. Se ha generado un ejercicio, me parece democrático, un ejercicio muy interesante donde se ha logrado poner de acuerdo, por ejemplo, a cerca de 70 medios de comunicación en una iniciativa para verificar tanto el contenido de discursos políticos como el contenido de las diversas publicaciones de medios informativos que se están manejando, y creo que es una iniciativa altamente deseable para tener un verdadero diálogo democrático que permita también esa trazabilidad de información y detectar mucho del contenido falaz que se está manejando en los medios, poderlo identificar y precisamente tener una mayor conciencia y un ejercicio mucho más efectivo para poder combatir esta desinformación.
Tengo dos preguntas más.
I have two more questions for Paloma. I want to ask Paloma, this is Maria Julia Giorgetti. I want to ask Paloma whether the user fact-checking processes are undertaken with people or with bots. Has WhatsApp signed any treaty in Central America to prevent misinformation and protect personal data? This is a question from Mario Alvalos. WhatsApp has a policy. This is about checked accounts, right? Checked accounts. It has the green badge, right? And yes, we do have a checking policy. which it carries out on the website. It basically confers authenticity on the accounts that are active on WhatsApp, particularly on our API, which is different from our messaging app. And second point is, I don't know if you're talking about general standards, but so far we haven't signed any agreement of that kind. Without prejudice to the fact that the efforts that we make in the area of misinformation also include, obviously, the area of Central America, not only our product, which is global, but also one of our fact checkers is the CPT, which is regional. Thank you, Paloma. I don't know if there are any last reflections to share. Can you hear me? Great. As we have already said, this business about the fact checkers. I would like to say that other users, we are following various initiatives in this area with the partnerships, and the way that, which I look at the way content is used. And this is quite interesting because it looks at the authenticity of content, which is also something that we need to bear in mind when we are sharing information. We need to look at who authored it, and we are all using different ways of checking information. And we have some platforms that are already taking this a little further. And for instance, blockchain technology is allowing us to check the way information is created and shared. We are also building content credibility indicators. And this is an area that touches upon governance. And I think this is going to be a very interesting area for discussion in the future to look at the kinds of tools that we develop to check credibility ratings. Well, thank you very much. This has been very, very interesting. Clearly, there are no simple solutions. I think Cláudio made a very interesting reference to the history of these issues and different issues, and how it's grown, how interest in this area has grown, and the way in which political campaigns are putting this issue front and center of their concern, because in the age of a global democracy, just what impact fake news can have. When we look at the elections in the US, to show the importance of the issue. So we will be sharing the information. I was very intrigued by Cláudio's reference to a document. I never got it, I have to say, but now I'm very curious and I would like to read it. So, Nico, please send it to me over the weekend. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope that you will stay safe, and I look forward to meeting up in person wherever that might be in the not too distant future. And thank you very much. Bye. And greetings from Oscar and Adrian. Thank you. Right. That was terrific, wasn't it? More complex than ever, I think. There are no simple solutions, but we need to keep on our toes and check the data sources. So we're going to have we'll get back together at 2:15, not 2:30. We're meeting back here at 2:15 with a presentation on fintech. We're going to move into more economical ways, blockchain, crypto assets, cryptocurrencies in our next talk. We'll see you in just over half an hour.